Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? My name is Tony Rizano, and you are listening to another episode of the world famous, the University of Love, the best podcast of one, two, three galaxies. But, ladies and gentlemen, you and I would just call this show Online Marketing Moves. And we are coming to you live today. Today is the greatest day. Today is the greatest day on planet Earth. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is May 19th. It is 2026. Today is and the greatest people are born on May 19th, okay? So we're gonna go down the list. Grace Jones, my uncle, my uncle Hargus, Malcolm X, Tony Rizzano. Name a top four better than that, okay? Now, my cousins, who is my brother, he's born on February 17th, and he shares a birthday with Michael Jordan, which is a great duo, but it's not a foursome. Okay? So that stops short. I have a homeboy. He was born July 3rd, July 4th. What's that? Him and the Independence Day. Eh, ah. You know, wife is born May 23rd. Who cares about anybody else being born May the 23rd? She's the only one that counts in my book, being born May 23rd. My mom was born May 30th. Nah, name me a better foursome, okay? You can't. You can't do it. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a long week. My birthday next year will be my birthday is already fading into the wind. It's fading into the background. If you're a man, you know, and it's all right with me, you know. I don't really care. I've never cared about birthdays too much, but my daughter was born on May the 9th, and I have quite the story for you, ladies and gentlemen. My daughter was born May the 9th. She was born a month early. Okay. My daughter decided I do not want to wait. I do not care. I do not like green eggs and ham. Sam, I am. I do not want to wait. I do not want to incubate anymore. I want to be out and about in the world. And that's what she did. My daughter was born on a Sunday. Uh, Not a Sunday. My daughter was born on a Saturday. My wife had to go to the doctor on Friday. My wife, they kept her for high they kept her because her blood pressure was up. Well, first she had a cold. She had a real bad cold, and so that didn't help with the blood pressure. So the blood pressure elevated. And then of course, they decided to keep my wife. They kept her. It went down. It went back up. Next morning, I am running to the hospital. I get there just in time, and they perform a emergency C-section. Ladies and gentlemen, you talk about a wild 24 hours. And I will tell you why it was such a wild 24 hours, because every Friday for the last few months, I've been training somebody. So on Fridays, we will go out, we would go out pretty far. We will go out to, let's say, Jacksonville. A couple times we went down to Tampa. We start off early Friday morning, and we normally get back late Friday. But I'm gonna be off on the weekend. I'm gonna be off on definitely gonna be off on Sunday. I work a lot of Saturdays. Sometimes it's half a day Saturday, sometimes the whole day Sunday. But we work a lot of Saturdays. So I know, eventually I'm gonna get back. Doesn't matter if I get back late Friday night, early Saturday morning. I don't really have to go into work on Saturday. I can stay home. But a lot of times I work, 6 days a week just because. And so that Friday, I was not robbing anybody, and they was like, "Hey, do you want to go down towards Jacksonville anyway?" I said, "Sure, why not?" Because you and I both know hospital bills aren't cheap, and every month, they wanted my wife to, pay like 3 to 400 bucks, for the hospital bill, whatever. That didn't matter. So I was like, I'll go down here. So of course my wife called me. She's like, they're gonna try to keep me. And I was like, oh and I'm already like, you know, in Florida, and I'm like, all right, now I gotta get back. Now I gotta start heading back. And, and so I broke every driving rule. We gotta set a certain amount of hours you can drive, certain amount of time you can work. We broke all those rules. We got back early in the morning, running to the hospital. It's like it felt like I was in boot camp all over. I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, but when I was in the Navy, the first 24 hours we stayed up like it was like being a zombie. I remember we stayed up almost 24 hours, and then that night we had like watch. And I just remember they was like, "Oh, you get to sleep 6 hours," but I didn't get to sleep 6 hours because I was one of the first people to have watch, and so I had watch. So I slept 2 hours, woke up, and did my watch, went back to sleep. Thought I was gonna get some more sleep, but 4 o'clock in the morning, you just heard banging. And it's like, oh goodness. But that's how I felt. So I got to the hospital just in time. They had my wife out there, ready to go, all prepped up. And I was like, what in the world's going on? And boom, 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 bam. Before I know it, ladies and gentlemen, I saw a little arm pop up. I heard a baby screaming, and I was like, "Oh man, with parents, two-time parents, just like that, ladies and gentlemen." And so, the baby was born. She's healthy. She's happy. She had to go to unfortunately, she had to be in the NICU, but that's all right because she's growing every day. She's growing like a weed. She wasn't on any oxygen, so we can all be thankful for that. But yeah, man. So that's been my week. And then of course my wife, she had the C-section. And so I know people like to think, oh man, C-sections, but it's a big surgery, you know what I'm saying? So I've been running around, taking care of my wife, taking care of my oldest daughter, going to check on my youngest daughter, doing this, doing that. I have no complaints because I enjoy everything about, as I tell my wife sometimes, I'm happily married to you. I don't know if I could be married to a lot of people. I mean, I know people like to say, "Oh, this is the love of my life," but we all know if you are a mature adult, if you are a realistic person, listen, you can find there are always going to be things about people that you can fall in love with. And there's always going to be things about people that you just don't like. And it doesn't matter if being married. There are things about my wife that I love. There are things about my wife I do not care for. There are things about me that my wife loves. There are things about me that my wife does not care for, okay? My wife does not love the fact that I do not like tomato sauce that much, okay? She don't love that, okay? That's not her thing, okay? Uh, but I say all that just to say I am very happy that to be married. I am very happy to be married to my wife. I like being married. I like taking care of things. I like being the common presence in the situation because everything seemed like it was going around me. This, that, the other. Trying to get back, trying to hurry up. But I just thought to myself, you know what? You know, everything's gonna be all right. It's not like there's no reason to go into full panic mode. There's never a reason to go into full panic mode. And so, ladies and gentlemen, um, and I know we preached this before, and I will say this again, and I will say it again, and I'll say it again. But sometimes things take longer than what you expect. Sometimes there's always gonna be obstacles in your way, but that does not matter. Look out, look out. you see the prize, you keep walking, you keep going on your journey, and everything's gonna be all right. And so, ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to talk about something very important. Today we are going to talk about, in Georgia we have the primary elections. We have the, hey, who you going to nominate for Republican? Who you going to nominate for Democrat? We done all that. I was able to stop for a few minutes, go vote early, you know, and so I did that. They had these different things, vote for this person, vote for that person, and people try to act like it's so hard to vote, but it's really not. I know they have different laws and stuff about IDs and stuff like that, but if you're an American citizen and you can't get an ID or you can't go, you can't, you don't know about voting or stuff like that, then you got to get more informed. You got to get more involved because the problem with people, and we're going to talk about race, we'll talk about race and content today. And the problem with people is they're so involved with stuff that doesn't matter. Like, you'll be amazed that people know, they'll know President Trump, they'll know his Secretary of State, but they don't know the Secretary of State in their own state. Or they don't know their county commissioner. They don't know their city commissioner, or they don't know what district they live in their town. They don't study the local politics. Local politics are way more important than national politics, foreign politics. I don't understand why we get into these beefs with these other countries when we should be America first. We should focus on America. That is the lie that Donald Trump told his people, like, hey, we're gonna always be America first. But he's out here trying to do the straight up home moves, and gas is like $4, $5. That's neither here nor there. Food prices are through the roof, but that's neither here nor there. Today I want to talk to you about race and content. And there was a guy that when I was in the hospital with my wife and we was sitting around, and you got a few minutes, you waiting on the baby to, you know, they gotta, get a baby, whatever, shots and all this stuff. So you have time to sit there, make sure your wife's all right. My wife was sleeping, so I read a couple articles. I remember I saw this thing. It was the guy called Chud the Builder, and basically Chud the Builder was this guy who like wore a hat and wore a mustache, and he would go around using the N word and trying to go. He basically was trying to go viral because you know black people will police the N word. You can't be white and say the N word to black people, or they will go crazy. And he basically showed them that, but at the same time, another problem is we people started giving Chud the Builder too much attention. Like, a guy dressed up like a goof going around using the N-word should be clearly ignored because clearly he has a mental illness. And that's all right. And that's okay. God bless everybody. But if you have a mental illness, you have a mental illness. And this guy probably had a mental illness. And so he was going around doing that and he was getting attention and he was getting publicity and he was trying to get some fame. But it all went to kaput for Mr. Chud the Builder because, you know, people saw him at some courthouse. They confronted him. Apparently, him and some guy got into a shootout. And now Chud the Builder is looking at 60 years in jail. I tell y'all this, ladies and gentlemen, to say all content ain't good content, okay? Race content is some of the worst kind of content you can do. If you're gonna put on for the white race, the black race, the Latino race, the Asian race, try to do something better than what Chud the Builder did, because what comes up must go down. It worked for a second. It's very gimmicky. It spells wrestling when you do that. And I know a lot of things are wrestling. People in hip hop, they're like pro wrestlers. You got Jada Kiss who talks like he's was a big time drug dealer, but his dad was like, "Hey, we had Jason in private school the whole time." And there's nothing wrong with going to private school, ladies and gentlemen. There's nothing wrong with trying to get your child the best education. But what's annoying is when you try to give your children, which we all, everybody, anybody that with a decent bone in the body, any human with a decent bone in the body, always wants their child to have a better childhood than they did. Okay, it's just a fact, and it's nothing wrong with that. It's just the way it is. Everybody, we all want to grow and develop. I grew up in a small town of 3,000 people, and in the summertime we played baseball. We used to throw, tennis balls to mops and hit them and try to keep up with stats. Like we really played baseball. Uh, you know, my daughter, the idea of us going to the pool was breaking out the water hose and spraying it on each other. I mean, stuff like that. But I tell you all that to say we all want better, but um the racial content is so blah, it's so dumb, and it's so boring at this point. It's like there's so much content that is just boring, and it's just hokey, and it's just kooky, and it's just dumb. Political content, racial content. I mean, you got this guy who was telling people, "Hey, man, you're chimping out." First off, why would you not just ignore this guy? Clearly, this guy has some type of mental illness. But no, as I told you, black people love the police the N word for some reason. You and I mean, if when they told me there was a guy going around Nashville showing, filming people and saying the N word, I would have laughed and I would have said, "Oh, he's clearly mentally ill." Because who cares? Who would want to do that? But, ladies and gentlemen, other people, and because we're because we are in such a lazy society. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, but we are in such a lazy society that the best and worst kind of content that people like to create is the reaction commentary. And forgive me, ladies and gentlemen, but it is 2 o'clock in the morning, and it is my birthday, and I am very excited to be talking to you because I've been on the roller coaster the last few days, but I am very excited to be talking to you. But the worst kind of content is the racial content. You see how it worked out for Chud the Builder? Somebody finally said, "Okay, I'm gonna pull his card." They pulled his card. They pulled a gun out. Now this guy's facing 60 years in jail. Okay. Uh, the race stuff. At the end of the day, uh, we all got to really stop hanging on to, the identity of things. Hanging on to your identity is a fine balance. Okay. Yes, you can take some joy into where you grew up. I have a lot of joy. I am very happy that I grew up in a small town called New Madrid, Missouri, with me, all my cousins, you know, DeMarcus, Latray, you know, little DeAndre, Coley Cole, my brother, my other brother. I'm very happy that we all grew up in this little town, and we made great memories. We have great memories, fond memories, but that's all in the past, and life moves on. And it wasn't until my wife told me she was pregnant with the second baby that I really realized. I was like, oh, I've been living in Georgia for 20 years. I met my wife here. I bought my house here. My daughters are gonna be raised here. It's in my mind now that, I closed the book on the oh, I'm from Missouri chapter. People don't gotta know that. People don't have to know that anymore. It's old news. It's old. If you know, you know. If you don't, who cares? Like, when I see my baby brother, we talk about, man, we used to play that baseball. And back in the day, yeah, yeah, yeah. We shake hands, we hug. I remember I always thought that he should have kept playing baseball. If he listens to this, I probably told him this before, but I really mean it. I always thought my cousin could have got a scholarship, like, maybe not, LSU or, something like that. But I really think my cousin was a heck of a baseball player. And I really think if he would have pursued it more, he probably could have got a scholarship. But that's neither here nor there. But what I'm telling you is the door on those memories, are not or closed for only a select few. I'm not going to spend a big amount of time telling my daughter how I grew up. They don't care. At the end of the day, the youth don't care how you grew up. The youth don't care about the music you listen to. Yeah, if they have a question, like sometimes, now I listen to a lot of jazz. Me and my daughter today, we was downstairs, we was listening to jazz, and one of the songs I like came one called "Salt and Peanuts." Salt peanut, salt peanut, salt peanuts. And my daughter, she was like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Yeah, you like that, don't you?" And sometimes she likes to jam out to that, but eventually, she's 4, so of course, I'm like, I'm her guy right now, And then, of course, eventually she's gonna get out more into the world, and she's gonna listen to more music, and she's gonna be like, "Dad, I don't want to hear no salt and peanut, salt peanut, salt peanut. I don't want to hear that no more. I want to hear this song, that song, that song." I'm not gonna say back in my day the music was because I've listened to quite a few terrible, terrible pieces of music. I used to bump that Master P back in the day. Okay, so, that's neither here nor there. Nobody's gonna care, I can't tell my daughter, "You gotta listen to that Jay-Z." She's gonna be like, "Who?" And by the time my daughter can go buy her own CD, it'll probably be Blue Ivy, Blue Ivy Carter or whatever, bumping, playing music. So, uh my time in the sun of talking about where I grew up, that's in the past. And it's the same as, you gotta let go of certain things and trying to identify as, I'm a real hood or whatever. You gotta let all that go and trying to hang on to an identity of, yeah, yeah. I'm very happy to be born into the family I was born into. I'm very happy to be I'm very happy to be a black man in the United States of America. I'm very happy about that. It is not who I am. It is not it shouldn't define you. You shouldn't, because there are so many things you can do. There are so many avenues you can go. And the more you hang on to that kind of stuff, the less you're going to really excel in the game of life, okay? Because a lot of times, unfortunately, um, I don't know about you, but as a black person in America, I'd rather deal with a racist than deal with somebody that's gonna patronize me, or pander, or be like, you should get this or you should get that, and then the whole time they don't want you to get none of that, okay? That's annoying. I'd rather deal with the person that's like, I don't like your kind, so I can know who to stay away from, okay? It's worse when they smile in your face and then they stab you in the back. I mean, that's neither here nor there. But what I'm telling you is you are more than that. And but you gotta be prepared for real battle, not just, hey, this guy called me a N-word, it's more to life than that. It's more to life than just listening to and another thing, you can clearly tell the whole thing is like a setup, you know what I mean? Like, come on, like, all of a sudden some guy just pops out of nowhere and he's like, "Hey, I'm calling black people the N-word. I'm getting attention." Come on, man. You can do better than that, right? There's more content. There's there's too much content out there to be made, to be created. There's too much money for you to be made, to have, to make, than to worry about that type of content because that type of content has a short shelf life. And you see, Chud the Dud is now in jail and he will be in there for the next 60 years. And if you want to go around calling people that are always upset about everything, or always want to confront, or always doing lazy content, because COE, content over everything, um, a lot of people love the clickbait stuff. So that is very clickbaity. The whole shut the builder, the N word, the I'm gonna beat you up, or don't chimp out, this, that, and the other. That is at the end of the day, that is content that you do not want. That is content that you do not need. That is content that you should not participate in. I didn't even know that Drake put out 3 albums until my friend pointed out to me, and I thought to myself, man, who really cares about Drake? Or who cares, what kind of content, well, I mean, what kind of album he's putting out at this point? Like, you know, I Drake is almost 40 years old. It's time to let it go. Like, who cares? Like, you know, y'all, come on, man. Play salt peanuts, salt peanuts. but but anyway. But what I'm telling you is the lazy content is not gonna rule the day. The 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 racial content is not gonna rule the day. The comment on other people's content, that's not gonna rule the day. The reactionary content is not gonna rule the day. You can't be Joe Budden in the gang sitting around commenting on today's, you know, topics and arguing with each other like a bunch of goofs. Like, that's good for them, but that's not gonna work for you. You gotta be more stealth. You gotta be more smart. You gotta be more daring. You gotta be more you. Okay? Sitting around with a group of friends that nobody cares about, you're not Jeff Teague. You're not gonna get these people to listen to you. You're not, what's another stupid podcast that you're not any of those people. You don't have a following. You want to build a following. You can build a following, but you got to get with the program, okay? You got to get with it. You got to hunker down. You got to focus. You got to lock in. You got to stay away from stupid content because if you keep doing reactionary content, there are 1,001 people who react to other people's content, and they sit there with a dumb look on their face in a dumb room, uh, and tell you about uh different subjects. And the worst kind of people nowadays, I'm sorry if this is long winded, but the worst kind of people to me in my nowadays are the people that think they're so smart, philosophy majors, and they want to talk to you about, the world and I think this and I think that, or they have all these think pieces. Everybody's a philosopher, everybody's Homer, everybody's Socrates, everybody's a deep thinker. And they look into music, they look into what people say, and this, that, and the other. Who cares? Please, ladies and gentlemen, please be original, for goodness sake. Do not be Chud the Builder. They've been doing race baiting since the beginning of time. It is old news. I know racism still exists. I know racism still exists right here in good old America. But ladies and gentlemen, the guy wants to go around and be an idiot and call people the N-word. Let him be. When you start giving all these goofs more attention to what they need, this is why everybody always goes to the negative side of content. Because everybody knows that you are not the positive people you say you are. You are a negative Nelly, and you want to be hating on people. You want hatred in your heart. Don't do the lazy content, okay? Don't be Chud the Builder. And now he's facing 6 years in jail. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it. That's all. Don't be lazy. Do real content. Do better content. Upgrade. You got to upgrade if you're going to win leads, win clients, win in business. Okay. Win in the podcast world. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back tomorrow with the all new episode of Online Marketing Moves. But until then, my name is Tony Zano. Thank you for listening. God bless each and every one of you. And as always, everybody, peace.